it's Tiaan Herselman here. Now, investment behavior is one of the hardest things to manage when it comes to investments. Now, there's no other person better at looking at investor behavior and even getting your money a job than my good friend and colleague Trevor John from Old Mutual International. I'll let you know, he's also an avid LinkedIn poster. He has his own blog, and he's quite avid even on TikTok and social media. Now, Trevor, you made a fascinating post recently on LinkedIn. It was about 50, 15, 5. And it spoke to the benefits of remaining invested and using compound interest to your benefit, which ultimately means managing your investment behavior. Just give us a bit more insight to that, because I thought it was a fascinating post, and I believe it got a lot of likes and a lot of shares.
Yes, Tiaan, when I started my career, I sat with a financial planner, and I was really passionate about this idea of building wealth. But the interesting thing is, in that first stage of wealth creation, you are the asset.
Yeah.
And so what often comes in there is earning disability cover, because you have to cover yourself as the asset, and if you get severe illness and all of these things. But when I was sitting down with this plan, I'm also quite passionate about using analogies, and for South Africans, cricket or rugby, and this idea of Bismarck and Yanni, who were both playing for the Springboks, where if Bismarck saved for 15 years, so I aligned it kind of with school. So if you wanted to put someone through 12 years of school and 3 years of university, Bismarck could save and Yanni actually pays for someone. And then you get this idea that, okay, over 15 years, so you've got two people, so saving half, this idea. At the end of the 15 years, you're going to put one person through school, and the other brother has now got capital, which fascinatingly, if you do the sums, and he's got 5% real returns after all expenses, everything, he will have built enough capital that he can actually fund someone to go through school forever. So this idea that money can kind of live forever. And so, I ended up having a crack at that, because when I got to the stage where I had built up, I was always a very aggressive saver. So 50% is huge, but it was just me. I didn't have dependents. I didn't have anybody else. I could save aggressively. So I actually managed to get to the point where I'd built up enough capital, not that I was wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but the things that I was passionate about were,
You could go out and do.
yeah, like reading, writing, this kind of conversations where you can see I get all excited about this kind of conversation. Social media, I've been doing it for years, because you can chat to people and I can tell people stories. And when I got to the end of that, yes, I actually had that capital, but it was a fascinating case study, because I got a little bit of it. I was only 34, and I got a little bit of insight into what retired people experience in that decumulating
Because
phase.
you've actually now started buying freedom.
Yeah, you buy freedom, but at a cost. So there's this whole movement called financial independence, retire early, FIRE movement. And like I saw a post earlier today where it was like called the Fizzle movement, because like it's a nice idea, but when you get into that stage where you're not living off a salary, it's quite stressful, because you're now talking about sustainability of your capital and what happens if it runs out. And every time the volatility of the market moves, you now have to actually spend that money. I call it firing money, because if you get your money a job, every time you spend it, you fire it. So those three assumptions, unpacking those three assumptions, 50%. How many people say 50%?
Very, very few.
Very few
Very
people.
few.
I mean, people push 10%, but we don't even have a savings culture. I think the national average is even lower than that.
Yeah.
15 years is actually very short. So we talk about long-term investing as 5 to 10 years, right?
Well, we probably argued 10, yeah.
Yeah, 10, but that's actually really short. You can get periods where the market's flat for 10 years. You can get a fund that has fantastic performance that's had 10 years of bad performance. So we build this thing of trying to encourage people to get away from daily, monthly thinking by throwing out 10 years. 10 years is still short. So 15 years is short, 50% is a lot. And then 5% real returns, I think a big part of investing is managing expectations. So people say, what can I get paid for this? And that's because we've got a salary mindset. We live off income. So we build we think in a currency, we think in our salary, we adjust our spending to our salary. Our whole world is a very hand-to-mouth existence. If your money actually gets a job, unless it's in fixed income, it doesn't get a salary. And that's noisy. And handling that noise is quite hard. So yes, you get 5%, but 5% is quite aggressive.
And also that job is a more higher tax paying job, because you put in the fixed income, the job you're getting your money is actually being taxed more.
100%. And so the irony is, because we think in noisy terms, one of the problems is, and we think in nominal terms. So real investing is above inflation. People just like a number that goes up and is quite stable. And the irony is that that's expensive in the long term. So you end up being underinvested in equity and overinvested in other classes. So I like the idea of this 50, 15, 5, because it encourages you, yes, simple thing is get as much of your money as a job as possible, save for as long as possible, and allow the money to work. Don't harass your money. And that was my biggest thing. As someone who was used to saving, I really struggled with firing my money. And like, because you spend your income, it's a monthly thing, and
It's going to come in, right? It's going to come in.
So if you want to go on a holiday that's above what you normally spend, and you've got the money, okay, do it. If you're spending capital, that it's like a permanent decision. And so I'm wary of saying that I was stupid to have like attempted to retire, because I think I learned a lot. It's a difficult story to unpack, but you can also, in South Africa, I think it sounds a little bit tone deaf to be talking about like retiring at 34 when most people can't do that. So I learned a lot, and I'm still unpacking it. I think I've got more empathy for people who retire in that decumulation phase. I know that 50% amount is
high.
Is high, and 15 years. The reality is, what I'm trying to change is get into this intergenerational wealth creation, because you look at Warren Buffett. He made 99% of his wealth after the age of 64. So maybe my whole goal needs to shift into never retiring, always cover my own expenses, but build capital like the Norway oil fund, which is not even invested in oil anymore because it's completely changed. So look, I'm going to spend my life unpacking that 50, 50, and 5, and maybe trying to justify the decision I made and coming back and all that, but it's fun.
Trevor John, as a young man, saved 50% over 15 years at a 5%. I probably was more than 5% real return, but let's just say 50% being saved over 15 years at 5%. And that should be, well, I think if you could aspire to that early on, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
But if you can if you can take maybe the 50% down and you extend that 15, becomes a game changer.
Yeah, so what I did is, yes, I came back, but ironically, I had more money when I came back to work than when I stopped. I just couldn't deal with the stress. And now I can leave that money alone. And actually, I can go back to look, I don't look at my investments all the time. When they're going down, it depresses me. So I kind of like put it aside, because I've got faith to leave the money alone. And I quite like looking at it when it goes up. So I'm a human. But what it means is that because I'm back and I'm working, my planning is now built around a family and kids and making sure I'm earning enough money for them. But I am, secretly looking at that number going up, and I am allowing myself to think of how I can change the life for my children, where maybe they can make different decisions to me because they've got more freedoms, because not all good ideas are good business ideas. And so this idea of early retirement, I think, is seductive. The reality is, retiring early, it adds a whole bunch of things that most of us aren't exposed to, because we all have the same. But coming back to that initial point, save more for as long as you can, and allow your money to work without harassing it.
And more importantly, get your money a job.
Thanks, Tiaan.